Hello everybody and welcome back to Imagination TV. We've had an amazing break as we've been working out how we can do our best to organise change around the world, how we can look to build bridges, how we can look to shift the economic models from cash exchanges, which has seen so many people missing out, to seeing how we can exchange knowledge and kindness and support each other in different ways to hopefully build more of a fairer world together. We're looking today at imagination, at mentoring, at building bridges and bringing this group together so we can organise change. And the framework that we're looking to bring together the whole world under is Imagination University. So today, let me check the date, 7th of October, 12:01 PM Australian Eastern Daylight Time, we open Imagination University. So you can head to aimmentoring.com and put in your expressions of interest now. If you're a school student looking to create change, if perhaps you've been outside the margins and you've been in a situation where you feel like the world doesn't see you, well, we see you and we see your worth and your value. And we want to give you the stage to show the world that you're not a problem to be fixed, but you're the solution. So there's plenty of entrepreneurship opportunities for school students from around the world. For university students, you get out and do your apprenticeship in organising change. Obama in his 20s, Jacinta Ardern in her 20s, they went out and they worked on the ground and worked out how to move people, how to hustle them and follow them up to make sure they can move from today to tomorrow so we can actually create tangible change. And this job, as a university student, you get to be an imagination president. You get to get 100 of your friends and go down and mentor 100 high school kids and build that bridge between those that are potentially going to have power in the future and those who are at risk of being left behind. For teachers, you get to bring imagination into the classroom and light up those classrooms so we don't end up with so many kids outside the margins feeling like the mainstream system doesn't see them. Let's flex the model and work within the walls of what's already there and see what we can bring to life. And for executives, you'll have the chance to level the playing field. And finally, for citizens, you'll have an opportunity to bring about your own project for change. So today we open applications. They'll be open for the next 2.5 months. And then February 1 next year, we'll open Imagination University to go out and build that fairer world that we're working towards. And here's our launch film that we've created for this very special moment.
We know what happened in 2020. But let's imagine 2021.
Let's imagine what a free and just world looks like.
Let's imagine a university free for all, with no paywalls to higher order thinking for anyone, anywhere. Let's imagine a social network for good, a bridge for us to come together and redesign the way the world works. Let's imagine what happens when we tell the kids at the back of the class that we see you.
There is a generation of kids just like you.
Let's imagine school students, university students, teachers, executives, citizens coming together to learn. Curriculum designed for the future we hope to build. Now imagine. It's happening right here. And you're invited. Welcome to Imagination University, brought to you by AIM, the Imagination Factory. Applications are open now.
Today, we've got a suite of people joining us over the course of the next hour, and we'll be doing specials daily until the end of next week as we work through gathering with people who are going to be enrolling in different elements around Imagination University. And one of the earliest enrollments we've got, Glenn Eismunger, you're going back to school. Tell us a little bit about your story with education and what you're looking to do as a citizen with Imagination University.
Thanks, Jack. Yeah, look, I'm in that, I suppose, that lovely retirement phase after doing 33 years in the state education system in New South Wales here, from a teacher through to being a principal. And seeing the inequities and the brick walls and the industrialised system of teaching we've had, and being frustrated with that. I then had 7.5 wonderful years working for AIM and really making a difference and getting schools on board and making a difference for Indigenous kids. And since stepping back into retirement, I've been able to enjoy the things and smell the roses of life and get into some music and some self-interest. But one of the things that I suppose really always resonates with me is that we are the wealthiest of people, and that that we have a lifestyle and we live in a bubble in Australia that is many ways unrealistic, and there are other coastal communities like where I live that are at the exact opposite of us. So I actually want to jump in and try and do something to help other coastal communities like mine and get my local people here to understand and see the world through a broader lens, but do it with a bit of fun, like do it through music.
I love that idea. And part of the challenge for us is, all of us, is working out the acknowledgement of where we are in our life and then how we build bridges to people who are in different places. And so stoked to see the music life come to life with you. We've got some special professors, some wonderful creatures who live in the land of puppets who are going to be coming to life throughout the university experience. So I'm sure we'll have some fun along the way. Gleno, what does knowledge mean to you, and what barriers have you seen to young people being able to access knowledge over the course of your life as an educator?
Sometimes knowledge, I think wisdom is a more important word than knowledge, because we hold knowledge up as you've got to have knowledge. But wisdom is being able to use that knowledge. And I think that what often happens is that we hold people back. We have a system of education where in this year you learn this knowledge and the next year you use this knowledge, a next set of knowledge. And I think we need to actually break that down. Some of the best success stories are people who have got wonderful knowledge that's turned into wisdom outside that sphere. So I think that knowledge is important, but using it is the true wisdom.
Best lesson a kid's ever taught you?
Humility. Humility. Sometimes, we come from, I've had a really tough day, this. And I had a kid in a classroom who has survived an absolutely 10 times worse than me, and being able to smile in the face of adversity. And probably one of the things that kids say that we don't is that to listen. You don't listen. You're not listening to me, sir. You're not listening. And I think the most important thing we do is we forget to listen. We're happy to expound what we know and our knowledge because we're older and more experienced, but we don't listen. And I think listening more is one of the most important things that kids have told me to do. Use 2 ears and 1 mouth in that order.
Yeah, and they're all gifts, aren't they, when people are passing on information to you, whether it's kids or older people your same age. Like, I find so much of my job in trying to is just being a curator. If I can listen and grab an idea like, oh, that was cool from that advertising person, or that was cool from that kid. who was struggling in some different ways. And that's cool from that person 5,000 years ago. And if you can collect all these things, hold them together, chuck them up on your kind of, I don't know, the whiteboard of your brain, you then have a chance to dance with really interesting realms. So I think a big part of what we're trying to do with Imagination University is just to truly chase the idea of a free mind, to let kids be free to dance, to wander, to let us all sort of arrive with, as you said, potentially there might be some people who have got a reasonably privileged or wealthy life around the suburbs that you're in, for them to be able to go, yeah, I acknowledge this, but I don't want it to also be chains for me in the same way that we have chains for kids who feel like they're constantly told they're disadvantaged. If we can acknowledge where we've come from and then walk onto a bridge together, I think we have a chance of building a fairer world. So Glenn, thanks for enrolling in Imagination University. We're really excited to work with you over the course of next year, and really inspired to see what teachers can do in the big goop of the teaching piece and what the citizens will do as well. So thanks a lot, Glenn.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to jump into the history of AIM for those of you that are unfamiliar with our work and trying to get a sense of what's been this origin story. So 16 years of work of us building bridges around the world. And we played this almost 2 years ago when we ran a festival of mentoring with a bunch of people from around the world to start sharing the model more and more. So it takes us up to about 18 months ago, and then I'll fill you in on some of the blanks, and we'll meet some other people enrolling in Imagination University on the other side. Opportunities are there, and we're just there to help you.
$50 and you have to wear your budgie smugglers.
National Hoodie Day is a chance to look good and do good. That next year we're going to run a global campaign to give away 20 golden tickets to 20 university students from 20 different countries to win a one-off scholarship for 3 years to see if they can take our model and rip a generation of powerless people out of inequality. Not only are we going to nail this back home, but we're going to turn our eyes to every kid that's been left behind and see if we can build a better, fairer world for us all. That starts tonight. Get ready for the next 10 years. You ain't seen nothing yet.
You. Sitting in the back row with the fire inside, we see you. You who has fought for everything, we see you. You who knows what it is to rebel, we see you. There is a generation of kids, just like you, waiting for you to see them. So if not you, then who? If not now, then when?
Dan Miller, tell us about your story and what it means to you to be enrolling in Imagination University and what you're going to be doing in your course.
Yeah, I started AIM as a very shy and reserved high school kid back in 2014, and have been on this crazy journey of growth and development over the last 6 years in multiple different roles here at AIM, and have been able to, see and capture a lot of that footage and to be part of those experiences around the world as we've rolled out this program globally. And to enroll as a citizen at Imagination University, I'm beyond excited to be, I suppose, just aware and to expand, my level of higher order thinking, and to be able to make a real change that's a personal kind of goal and target of mine, and to, venture off and kind of explore and use some imagination in this next chapter.
It's an interesting point, the one around higher order thinking, and our research around, calling this a university, kind of looking into all of the different university systems that exist around the world, and going way back in time to like 300 odd BC, where you've got Aristotle and Plato setting up their own respective academies or university frameworks. And a lot of those concepts have been borrowed for Western democratic university systems. And then in some places, we've entered to a place where universities have become really clearly linked to job outcomes. If you get a university degree, the value is seen on its job. If you're able to then go get a job with that, and then the price point for those university courses start to be higher and higher at times when they're linked to the jobs, which pay a lot more. And sometimes I think along the way we might have lost a little bit of the sense of this higher order thinking, the pursuit of knowledge, of what it means to really have wisdom. Jackson Merritt, I think you've been contacted late in the night by Brendan Newton via LinkedIn perhaps, or have been reached out to cold and are now jumping in, meeting AIM for, pretty early on in the journey. Tell us a little bit about what you do and what piqued your interest when you heard about Imagination University and what we're trying to do. I think you're on mute, cuz.
Sorry, there we go. It's the first time using Zoom, so I'm excited. This is awesome. I got in contact with Brennan Newton through doing some breathing. So he came down to the pools where we do the breath work, and I do breath work sessions daily. And basically we do a little morning routine where we'll get up, have a coffee, and read a book, and then we'll basically just do some breath work and jump in the cold water together. And then got in touch with AIM through Brendo, and I love this idea of the university. It's really, really interesting.
And that moment where you're sitting there doing breath work, that's got to be able to give you some sort of knowledge and wisdom, doesn't it?
It's pretty powerful stuff, hey? Like, I didn't realize how powerful doing just simple meditation practices were until I found breathing and found conscious breathing just for stress and anxiety relief. It's really, really interesting.
Sam Refshorgi, tell us a little bit about your active mind and how you've been able to balance, wanting to get things done with then trying to find space to listen to yourself, and then what enrolling in Imagination Universities means to you and what you're going to try and do as a citizen. There's a triple combo for you. Have fun.
Wow. Well, this is all about higher order thinking, isn't it? So pose 3 very different questions all together and see if I can come up with one answer and buy myself some time whilst I think about it. Yeah, the active mind, I think, is definitely something that I kind of see it very similar to me as the role that ego plays. It's something that drives me and helps me to achieve some awesome things, but then also really challenges me and makes a lot of other things difficult in life. And so I'm trying to look at Imagination University as an opportunity to embrace that active mind, but maybe in a bit of a slower way, take the time to let myself be uncomfortable and learn through that process and learn from other people, and take what AIM's done so well by engaging with and supporting marginalised young people around the country to help focus that into my world and what I can do with that knowledge and power.
Yeah, one of the things that excites me about the university is this building bridges. So we've got 6 fields of discipline that we're going to be teaching within. So the first one is imagination, the second one is mentoring. The third one is around flipping the script. So saying to kids, hey, you're not a problem to be fixed, you're the solution if we can give you the stage, and changing that narrative. And the fourth one is looking at this idea of building bridges. And we have organising change and hoodie economics as two other frames. But I'm fascinated by how we can design complex social networks that bring different people together in a relatively safe environment, working towards a project and an outcome. And so the tutorial groups will actually be organised across the different discipline areas. So you'll have a school student and a university student. So perhaps a school student organiser from Nigeria, who's an entrepreneur, an Aboriginal university student, maybe from, Broome, with a teacher from Scandinavia, with an executive from the United States, with a citizen from New Zealand. And the citizen could be 95, you can have a whole age range, and the five of you all will have to get together and find a common language and work out how to support each other and break down the different projects. So that's as much of the, like, if I could be in every room, I'd be fascinated just to see what those conversations are going to look like. Hey, Rianne, there's a serious pointy tip to our work. Like, we genuinely want to try and see if we can work towards eradicating educational inequality. And that's the pointy tip to this vision. Over the course of the next 3 years, we want to see if we can lift 1 million marginalised kids out of inequity, including 10,000 Indigenous kids in Australia, through the variety of actions from the students coming through the university as they go out and organise change. At its heart, what's pushing you to see things change? Why are you getting up every day and working so hard on this? And what's the fire inside that is making you want to see this change a reality?
Yeah, Jack, I think, you said this to me 5 years ago when I applied for the role here, and that was that you're not too young to lead, and that if we wanted to make a change in the world, we had to start just doing it. And that's what pushes me to continue to do what I do, because I meet hundreds of kids, weekly, that tell me that they are the change and that they have these dreams and these passions to go on and to really uplift not only their community but the rest of the world. And that's what pushes me to wake up every day to continue to want to uplift more kids so that they have that ripple effect within their communities.
And how do you hang on to hope? And how do you stay positive when there's everything that's going on in a normal life, a normal world, and the normal world is pretty unbalanced, like the way a lot of the cards have been dealt. Our ancestors as Aboriginal people in Australia have had some pretty gnarly stuff to work through. There's still lots of complexity here. There's complexity for people outside the margins who are just purely from where they're born are going to face an unbelievably tough level of circumstances. And then you throw into that COVID, economic recession, climate change, complexity. Like you sit down and read the news or watch the news at night, it's hard to it's hard not to feel the weight and the heaviness of that. So how are you finding a way to be hopeful, and do you believe that the world can change?
I've had to learn through COVID to find hope in the smallest things possible, like art, like sunsets, like cuddles with my dog. And, that just makes those bigger moments of hope where, kids come onto the show and they want to lead, where they, when I was hosting this show a couple months ago now, I jumped on one day and one of the kids from the high school that was the co-host had said, like, do you mind if I take over today? Like, that gives me hope. The smallest amount of things during this time I've been able to just hold on to, and to know that, once we get through this, there's going to be so many things at the other end that lift people up and that really make people want to believe in hope, and then to be able to give those moments of hope and inspiration to others.
I was trying to start a fire the other day in our backyard, not a big fire, like a small fire. And as I was starting, I was just sitting there like match after match, not being able to get the thing alight, and was trying to like blow into the leaves and thinking about people that had learned to start fire without any of these different tools that we've got today. And, big things, like big, bold things that, Nike or Netflix or Google or all these things that people sometimes deify or talk about, like the big celebrities or people making the end of the journey. It is just one step after one step. It's one little bit of kindling, one little spark to then get the flame going. And it's so small at the start. And then it's gnarly how hope can be contagious as well, how that can move. And when you hold on to it, it can move almost like breath. I think, Jackson, when you think about the color of the breath that's coming in and out of your body, you can almost change the whole modality, your brain and your body and your soul. And I don't know what it is, but there's something that moves energetically from your breath into then the other person's breath in your orbit. Have you experienced that doing group work with breathing?
Absolutely. So we do a bit of a breathwork circle where we'll have, 10 or 20 people in the circle. And the way that we look at it is we've got connection through three things. So you've got your mind, your body, and your environment. And the environment is the oxygen that we breathe in. And what comes with that oxygen is an energy. And it's often really positive vibes at the beach where we do it. And so people are always just left feeling really, really clear, really focused, and just genuinely happy. And you spoke about hope previously. In such a tough time, I think, or such an uncertain time, there's one thing that we all can be certain about. And I think that's humans need connection. And that idea of connection, I think, needs to be started with a community. So finding a community of like-minded people that do things together, that grow together, rather than me pushing Jack down and growing for myself. It's like, okay, let's bring each other up together. So that's what we find with the breathwork, is that it just brings people together because we all breathe the same oxygen. And then when we breathe the same oxygen, we breathe the same energy.
Yeah, I think the gnarly part that we actually even have oxygen, like how the world has had to come together for us to have the ability for all these trees to then like drink in carbon and spit out oxygen, and like how fragile the atmosphere is, and like all these atoms and everything just flying around all the time. It's a crazy thing, and to value breath and to be able to have the opportunity to actually respect it, I think is a fundamental. We're very lucky to be alive. Ree, you mentioned getting through it. Maybe there's, we had Stan Grant on the show a few months ago who said, maybe there's always been struggle. Maybe we've been through times like this before, pandemics, different challenges. And so part of the art, I think, is finding hope, positivity, love, satisfaction, joy, and even the toughest of times. And if we can do that, then maybe we can really enjoy the good times as well. Sammy, when you look at the world around you, what is challenging you to be hopeful, and how are you then meeting that challenge?
Yeah, I'm in a pretty incredible time of my life in which I've just had a baby daughter who's growing up really quickly. She's over 1 now, so I don't even know if I can technically call her a daughter. But when I was hearing you speak, Ree, about finding hope in the littlest of things, all that I could picture was her little self. And just the hope and joy mixed with the struggle and challenge that a child brings into your life. And so I've tried really consciously over the last couple of years to remove as many things in my life that take my attention and too much of my energy away from trying to learn how to be the greatest father I can be for her. And so I'm really trying to set up my life and be conscious of the decisions I make, to give myself the opportunity to live as many of those little moments with Edie, my daughter, so that we can grow up hopeful together and learn that together as we both grow.
Yeah, I think if we can extend that empathy of the feeling of love and absolute service that you have for your daughter, and we can find the empathetic channel to then extend that to other kids, then we start to understand that our responsibility is, I think at the heart of mentoring is gather knowledge, make a heck load of mistakes, pass it on. So hopefully we make a few less mistakes along the way to all children. And that's how humanity starts to stay connected. When we isolate in small linear houses and small linear family units, and we forget our connected responsibility to each other, and not just humanity, to other animals and the environment around us, then we lose a little bit of the moral balance in I think what our opportunity is in a life to pass on. So lots of big ideas for us to work through over the course of the next 12 months. Rhianne Miller, Jackson, Sam Refshoghi, thanks for joining us, and stoked to have you guys been a part of Imagination University. And we're about to throw to a clip called Dreams, which we've been making, and we're going to continue to make, going around and catching up with young people around the world and asking them where do dreams come from. And then I'm pumped to catch up with a very special guest named Layla on the other side of this, who's going to be talking about enrolling in Imagination University. So we'll see you on the other side of dreams. Ree, Sam, Jackson, thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
We want to try and work out where do dreams come from. So what do you think? Where do dreams come from?
From the dream time.
What are dreams?
Comes from your imagination.
What is that?
It's like a world of things that you think of.
What do you guys dream about?
Riding a unicorn and a turtle on its back.
A turtle on the back of the unicorn, or the turtle and the unicorn next to each other with you sort of one leg on each?
Next to each other, I'd say.
Next to each other.
Who's powering the movement?
A cheetah.
What do you dream about?
Being rich.
Echiloto chichi.
I want to know, what's a dream?
A train is something that runs on the rails, and it takes people from Brooklyn to the Bronx, or from Queens to Brooklyn.
Who makes dreams?
Us.
Your brain? I reckon dreams are clouds what like are in your head, and like they picture all the stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do actually.
I think I go to sleep and my bed takes me to this stuff.
Your bed takes you?
Yeah, it kind of flies and takes me to these places when I sometimes have dreams.
What is your dream? Do you have a dream?
I dreamed about dinosaurs.
You can dream about like you're in a forest or a jungle.
I have dreams when I'm a green guy who can turn into animals.
Who invented dreams?
Martin Luther King.
When do you reckon the first ever dream was ever had?
1981.
So since 1981, when the first dream was had, have all people since that moment been able to dream?
No.
Why do you think no?
Sometimes people need to see stuff and hear stuff to dream. Or some people don't because they can just stay up and don't go to sleep. Yeah, I reckon every kid has a dream. But sometimes you have a scary dream, like on Halloween you might have a scary dream.
And those bad dreams are so, like scary. Sometimes you dream about when you are in a scary hotel where there's vampires and zombies and skeletons that are still alive.
How much do you think dreams cost to make?
$10.
$10?
That's a well-priced dream.
What do you think, Bob?
The amount that you have to pay the hospital to get yourself out of your mom's belly.
What is psychology?
Psychology. We don't know the word that we call psychology. And that word is confusing us. We don't know. Psychology. Psychology.
Why do you think we use imaginations? Why as human beings, why do we have an imagination?
You can go off into far places. I don't know. It's hard. Really hard.
Why is it hard?
It's just hard.
Well, that might be our time.
Layla, where do you think dreams come from?
I think dreams come from imagination.
Okay, you got that part. Now tell me, what's imagination?
It's a bit more tricky. What do you think it is? Where do you think it lives? Where do you think it lives?
In the mind.
in your mind.
In your mind, yeah. Hey, I saw your application that you've been working on for Imagination University. Layla, can you tell me a little bit about what made you write that application and what you want to do as a student at Imagination University?
I want to close down all the SeaWorlds and free all the orcas and dolphins from captivity.
Awesome. What a cool dream. And Steph, are you enrolling in Imagination University as well?
Certainly am, Jack. Yes, happy to be.
And have you thought about what your project might be that you work on?
Yeah, I do. It's an idea that's been buried for a couple of years, and when I was playing around with the idea of joining, it sort of just surfaced again, and it's about micro street performances. So imagine you're sitting at a cafe outside and you have a couple of kids come up and do like a one-liner stand-up comedy act for you, go on their way and just make you feel really great for the day. Maybe it's a backflip, maybe it's a card trick, but it just shifts perceptions of what people view you as. So if you're a marginalised kid, maybe here in Australia, Indigenous students, changes the way that people view you.
Very cool. Helen Wiseman, you're enrolling in Imagination University today. Tell us a little bit about why.
Look, for years I've had a real interest, a passion for supporting children and young people who've experienced having a parent in the criminal justice system. And I've just that video of listening to the children, their dreams was just absolutely delightful. And that's why I do that work. And we know that being separated from a parent can be a really traumatic experience. And we often show sympathy when that separation is due to illness or is due to divorce, but we can often see less sympathy when that separation is because mum or dad have had to go to prison. And as we know, for Aboriginal young people and for Black people, it's immensely sad, but very disproportionately represented in that group. And in fact, that's one of my reasons for joining AIM, for coming on the rocket ship as a member of the board of directors. And I spent many years sitting on the board of directors of an organisation called Shine for Kids, and Shine for Kids supports children who have a parent in prison, and I'm currently a vice patron. And one of the things that our research has shown, from that organisation, that for many children, they make it their life's mission to be hidden because of the shame and stigma that can sometimes attach to their situation. And so, they don't have a voice and they don't have a platform. And I do have a voice and I do have a platform, and indeed I have many platforms. I'm extremely lucky. And so what I'd like to do in enrolling for AIM University is I'd like to give particularly the older young people in that situation a voice and a say in the future. And the way, if I think about what I do in terms of, I have a career in business. I was reflecting on this and thinking, if I was sat in a boardroom, which I'm sat in the boardroom a lot, and if I had a group of young people, a young person or a pair of young people come to me and say, we've been looking at your company and we're thinking, like, when we're grown up, this is what we think that your company can do. This is how we want your company to change and how we want your company to help create the future. And I know that I would get so much value from that, and I'll link that to something at the moment. And I know, my colleagues sitting around the table would get so much value around that, because actually we don't have the answers. We don't know what the future brings. And I want to find ways of being able to co-create that future. And I've been watching AIM TV for quite some time. And one of the things it's a long answer to your question, but one of the things that's absolutely blown me away is just the capability, the wisdom, the passion, the drive, how young people are so articulate and so clear in what they want. And the amount of times that I've sat here watching the show and thinking, my goodness me, I've learned a lot from that. And I know that the people, my friends, can learn so much from that. So I'd like to bring that wisdom into the boardroom. And at the same time, I'd like to give those young people an opportunity to be mentored by people in that organisation, help them prepare, help them understand, and hopefully that will inspire them as to what may be possible for them. So that's my reason why.
Brilliant. Tom Derry, you've had a long, esteemed professional career, and Now going back to university via Imagination University, what is it that you're looking to get out of your project as you bring that to life working in Imagination University next year? We might have you on mute. Gotcha. I think you're off mute now, Tom, if you want to give that a go.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha.
Yeah, right. Can you see me, Jack?
Yep, all good. Okay.
One of the privileges I have is to be associated with AIM, like Helen, on the board and as chairman. And it gives me an opportunity to think about just the sort of things that you're asking for in the opportunity to join university and Uni of Imagination. And the thing that strikes me most that I would like to explore really, and I will through this process, is the whole concept of prisons. When we think about doing something wrong, you have a thing called wrong time, and it's a great learning, and all of us make mistakes, and some of us make mistakes, end up in prison. And I think that's crazy. And there must be a better way of finding ways to correct bad experiences and things we've learned as we've made mistakes rather than prison. And if it is necessary to take some action if we make mistakes, well, there must be kinder, more clever, much more scientific ways of doing it than being in prison, particularly for our Indigenous community, as Helen sort of touched on. It's disproportionate, it's crazy, and it's wrong. And I think the opportunity to spend time focusing on this with the help of a lot of kids, a lot of young people, that some of whom may have gone through the experience, others that have given some thought to this. But I'd like to address that question if I had the opportunity.
There's a fascinating role that story plays in shaping policy change and shaping behavioural change and shaping attitudinal change, cultural change. And I was lucky enough to have a bit of a bird's eye view into a really powerful story around prison and incarceration in the States, which was Orange is the New Black, which my partner was on.
Yes.
And over there, watching how human Genji Cohen and the team behind that show and all of the actors and the storytellers, how human they made the characters that are behind prison doors, and how much we were able to find an empathetic link into the human nature of mistakes and at times systemic discrimination, which leads to people being arrested and being pulled into places. And I was at an event in New York once when they were talking about the challenges with incarceration, and the speaker compared someone from a privileged background to someone who's from a background who doesn't necessarily have those privileges. And they basically said, you get less chances. So if you're less privileged, you don't have an uncle who's a lawyer who you can call and get you out. You don't have necessarily the bail cash that's sitting around. You don't have the experience of people in your family looking different to those people that are usually picked up by police, and all of these things to unwind. And I think, but with your weight of storytelling experience, Tom, there could be something really fascinating around that, not only in Australia, but potentially globally, around how we move for behaviour and amplify people doing great work.
Jack, I was first drawn attention to this many years ago when I had the opportunity to study at Stanford, and there was a famous Stanford experiment. You may have heard of it. And if I've got a minute, I'll share it with those listening, because it's an amazing story of how this social scientist took 20 very balanced kids, tested balanced kids from all sorts of backgrounds, and made half of them prison wardens and half of them prisoners, and created a prison in the basement of Stanford Library. The experiment had to be stopped after 3 days because of the way these prisoners were being handled. And although there's been lots of criticism of that study, it really sparked my imagination to say, there's got to be a better way than prison.
Yeah, definitely agree. And Layla, that brings us back to your first point, because there's also animals that are imprisoned in different places. And is that what you're thinking about when you think about how to provide freedom or a happier life for animals?
Hear that first bit? My earphones dropped out.
I was just saying, Layla, we were talking a little bit about prison and the challenges that people face, but is that what you're sort of thinking with animals as well, that a lot of animals are trapped and they should be able to have freer lives?
Yeah.
Do you want to show your painting?
Oh, cool. We got a painting as well.
Yeah.
Go on, show us, Layla. Awesome. I love that. Well, Helen, Layla, Steph, Tom, thank you so much for lining up to be a part of Imagination University. We're really excited to see a bunch of people come together over the next 2.5 months to enroll in this university. And, you know, as the video said at the top, 2020 we know has been challenging, and with hope and a lot of work, I think we may be able to turn the tide in 2021 and make this a moment that humanity stopped, paused, and then got to work to design a very different world that hopefully is more equitable for everyone. So thanks, Tom, thanks, Helen, thanks, Steph, and thanks, Layla, and we'll see you on the other side. And now we're going to go catch up with one of our professors from the university. So very seriously, our friends who live in the world of imagination are going to be our lead professors at the university. And we think that these characters are absolute magicians, that they're imagination personified, and they hold as much wisdom as any being on planet Earth or any other planet in the universe. And we're about to catch up with Professor Lionel Korn, who is a professor of organising change and the master of the environment. And Lionel Korn is going to take us on Lionel Korn's climate class, and over the course of the university you'll be hearing from a variety of the different professors. So we'll just throw to Lionel Korn. I think he's outside. Lionel Korn, over to you.
During this year's fire season, around 110,000 square kilometres of bush, forest and parks across Australia burned. That's the size of Switzerland, Jamaica, Taiwan, Israel, Singapore and Norfolk Island put together. Which sounds like a fun country. Scientists recently said climate change increased the risk of these fires by at least 30%. I'd planned to ask some of the local animals what they think of climate change, but unfortunately 3 billion of them died in the fires, so there's no one left to ask.
I think we've got Debola Ajay with us, and please correct me if I have pronounced your name incorrectly, but if you are there, I'd love to hear from you about what you're looking to get out of enrolling in Imagination University.
Hey, hi Jack.
How are you?
Very well, very well. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here and to share a bit of my perspectives on Imagination University. Well, for me, I'm looking at coming on board as an executive, from that viewpoint, having the privilege to run a number of companies right now and over time, and to have teams of people that I work with in executing certain goals. One thing that I have come to see that is very important is reinventing the workplace culture, especially in Africa. So COVID forced, the entire world to, of course, reconsider coming to that table of work. And we all had to work from home for the longest time, 5 months, ever, totally shut down here in Nigeria. And then as, COVID, the restrictions started to be lifted by, governments all over the world, a few of us were able to go back into the office, but we see some organizations taking the opportunity to reinvent themselves along those lines, right? Are we going to get better outputs from people in the workplace if they are allowed to work in their comfort areas, and if they're allowed to work at their own pace, if they're allowed to work more from the direction of meeting set deliverables, much more than working within a 9-to-5 specific, frame of time? Which one will be more effective? So We have seen a lot of individuals, a lot of companies, and a lot of us business, owners and business executives place a demand on our imagination as regarding how that workplace is structured. Another thing we're looking at is how can we get better out of our people? We realize that, it's one thing to be present in the workplace, is another thing to be able to measure productivity as a whole. So another thing what we're looking at is paying more attention to measuring how productive really are people. The current systems that we work with, is it bringing the best, out of people? And we realize as well that the workplace is also another type of education for a lot of people, very important education, because there's a lot about working across, in a diverse team, across having to deal with individuals from different backgrounds and cultures, and coordinating these individuals to achieve specific common goals and to function as a unit. So how much of productivity are we really getting out of our people, right? And how much of education are we really allowing to happen in the workplace, both vertically and horizontally? Vertically in the sense that how much are we as business executives allowing our people teach us?
Yeah, and when you think about all of those, there's so many frames that we put on things. I had someone say to me once that a problem well framed is a problem half solved. And, we have the framework of the office. And I've been thinking, as we navigate this transition to a different way of operating, all of these buildings that may be empty and all of these people that sleep on the streets, can we build bridges for offices to maybe be temporary accommodation if people want to work from home? When we have infrastructure that's sitting there, can we be clever as businesses to then see success as linear success alongside the business, but also how do we then bring an ecosystem of people to make sure that we're creating a share of opportunity and happiness and joy within the worlds that we work in? Because that's hard to measure. That doesn't kind of check out with a dollar sometimes.
Yeah. Totally valid point. And it also speaks to us being willing to look at, there is a form, I came across a particular company, I think in Norway, who, or the United Kingdom, one of the two now, who looked at implementing a shared system of ownership within the organization, right? Rather than just employing people and having that cycle of individuals who come and go, they wanted to make sure that everyone who worked in that company and on that business had a sense of ownership. And it did something very interesting. They ensured that every individual across all levels working in the organization had access to ownership shares in the company, And again, this speaks to that willingness and that demand to look at things totally radically differently.
Yeah, and that's a scary jump, isn't it? I'll jump over to Parul quickly. Parul, how do we balance pragmatic imagination? How do you go out into a word like imagination often is dismissed as childlike, or when you see puppets like Lionel Kahn, who I think is a genius, you kind of think, oh, that's a kid thing, So how do we take the opportunity to imagine new realities and balance that with the risk-adverse nature that we have inside of us as well, which is fear of something new, fear to leave from what I know to something that is unknown? How do we build bridges to those new realities?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Jack. How do you connect something as abstract with what's in the real world? How do you bring the past into the future? How do you stay in between? And coming from India, where I come from, like one of the best examples I've seen in my life ever has been Mahatma Gandhi and the work he's done when India attained its freedom, independence back in 1947. And initially, I didn't get Gandhi. I was strongly against the ideology of Gandhi, but it took me a while to come around full circle to see that there was a reason why we had to do it with nonviolence. There was a reason why we had to use these values, which all came out of imagination, which were natural to us as humans, but we'd lost them in between, in the transition phase of like schooling and becoming certain types of individuals on the production life of human industry, so to speak. And for me, it was that whole imagination saying, no, we can imagine a whole new real world with totally different value sets, and we can build it. And look at where India is now.
And I think part of that is like, it's not bad to do new things. It just can be a bit scary, and you don't have to, it doesn't mean that everybody that you, and I think that's part of the tension at the moment is there's a lot of progressive, and even the word progressive is contestable. There's a lot of agendas that are saying we need a significant transformation. And then there's a lot of agendas that are saying, well, life's pretty good here. And there may always have been those tension points throughout human history. But part of the challenge is acknowledging everyone's worth as human beings and acknowledging everyone's contributions. And even if the past has been challenging at times, you could say quite negative with some of the decisions and behaviours that have been enacted, trying to see the best in people's capacity to take them from now to moving forward. Because if we keep at a standstill, frozen on either side of the bridge, I don't think we'll ever be able to reach whatever newness we're trying to build. So that's one of the elements of the university, which I'm proud of. I'm proud of AIM's DNA, is we protect that bridge in between people, that it's a safe space to come together from Nigeria to India to Australia and everywhere in between, from 5-year-olds to 105-year-olds. Let's come together and work it out. We don't know the answers, but we'll hopefully try and provide a stage to facilitate the questioning. And I think that will be a key part of the process. Bronwyn Bancroft, who also doubles as mum, special moment for us here, Mum. We get to, you gave me birth and I get to give you an emeritus professorship. So you are going to be the first ever emeritus professor of Imagination University. And it's not just for giving birth to me. What we wanted to acknowledge really genuinely was your commitment to imagining new stories over a lifetime of work. As an unbelievable artist who consistently goes to places that are new, consistently creates new worlds. You give all of us an opportunity to see what's possible in creation, and then you've worked so hard to diplomatically go back to the normal people who don't necessarily live in a world of imagination more regularly and try and build bridges to create more equality. You've had a dedication to working in education with people. You work with Bamali's been outstanding, and as a founding AIM board director, and not just as mum, your dedication's been unbelievable to the work that we've been doing over 16 years. So it's our privilege to be able to offer you the first emeritus professorship of Imagination University. I don't know if you have to really do that much. You just sort of get it as a title and can whack it on your business card if you still have one, and then you can keep doing the work with us. So I wanted to just celebrate that with you and then give you the microphone for anything you'd like to reflect on.
Oh, look, Jack, it's always humbling to be associated with anything that is going to make change in a world that is full of inequity. And my dedication to learning started when I was kind of 15, and I flipped the switch from being a naughty girl to a naughty girl, but still a girl with imagination, drive, and a discovered intelligence. And I think to get a professorship after finishing my doctorate at 61 is just like this great big beautiful candle of hope that I hope transcends all of the hardship that we're all dealing with on a daily basis across the world. It's been staggeringly evident that inequality has never been more pronounced in the world than what COVID has illustrated. So, with great joy, I accept the emeritorious professorship, and I think it's wonderful. The world of imagination is the world of the future. And, I'm just so excited to go to a university that doesn't have walls. So I'm so excited. Thank you.
Pleasure. And your official certification will be coming in the form of a custom-made AIM hoodie that we'll be creating for you for your emeritus professorship. So stay tuned for that one. Thanks for everything you've been dedicating your time towards. And we'll just finish up with this group. Adebola, can you tell me what's giving you hope in this current moment? with the landscape you're seeing from Nigeria outside?
So for me, thank you for that question. I see, I mean, one thing that I saw here in Nigeria, the pandemic really shook everyone. I mean, it was unexpected and quite profound. Such a global shutdown hasn't happened in at least 100 years. And I haven't come out of that scary and uncertain phase. I see people have a new wave of appreciation for life and for being here and we lost so many people during this global pandemic, but I've seen people come back to the table with a renewed sense of hope. And that gives me hope. Contrary to what you would, if we had all come out of this pandemic overwhelmed with fear and caught up in a space where we're unwilling to continue, that would have been something else altogether. But that gives me hope that as mankind, we are resilient. As mankind, we have the capacity to forge ahead, to press on, to discover new territories, new ways of doing things. And so, like Paru said, there are some things that we had lost along the way. And I believe that what has happened in the world, in this 2020, in the last 5 years, has given us the opportunity, has repositioned us, with the willingness to come to the table with a new appreciation and to go at life from new directions. So, yeah.
Amen to that. Well, we look forward to working with you in Imagination University, and look forward to seeing more and more people have the opportunity across the continent of Africa and more broadly to enroll in the university. And part of the thinking behind it is, there's so few people get the opportunity to go to a university and have that experience. So we really want to open it up to everybody from every different background to have that chance. So thank you for your wisdom. Thanks for getting up relatively early in the morning for us. And Parul and Bronwyn, Professor Bronwyn Bancroft, thank you all for joining us to be a part of this segment. And we're now going to throw to a clip that every year we work with a bunch of the AIM mentees or the high school students around the world to record an anthem. And a couple of years ago, we worked on a song by Sam Cooke called A Change Is Going to Come. So we're going to throw to that now. Thanks to Dobola, thanks Parul, and thanks Bronwyn. Thank you.
It's been too hard to live it, but I'm afraid to die. 'Cause I don't know what's up there beyond the sky. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes it will. I go to the movie and I go downtown. Somebody keep telling me don't hang around. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gon' come. Oh, yes it will.
Then I go to my brother and I say, brother, help me please. But he winds up knocking me
Ermin, tell us what your project you're planning for with Imagination University, and thank you for joining us to share a little bit about what you're going to be doing with us. Might be on mute. There we go.
I'm very good at not chucking myself off mute. To answer your question, I'd like to read a little story that I got. Shout out to the amazing Saru in Zimbabwe for having shared this story. Give me 1 second just to locate it. So it goes. One day a man was walking along the beach when he noticed a boy picking up and gently throwing things into the ocean. Approaching the boy, he asked, "Young man, what are you doing?" And the boy replied, "Throwing starfish back into the ocean. The surf is up and the tide is going out, and if I don't throw them back, they'll die." So the man laughed to himself and said, "Do you realize there are miles and miles of beach and hundreds of starfish? You can't make any difference." After listening politely, the boy bent down and he picked up another starfish and he threw it into the surf. And then smiling, he said to the man, "I made a difference to that one." And that's really it. That's really part of what has brought me here to Imagination University. In over so many years, up and down the continent of Africa, I've seen people, ordinary people, working so hard to make a difference for those around them and for the planet. Sometimes it's people who have influence and position, and sometimes it's people who are really actually struggling to get by and just to have basic needs, but are really trying to do something and make that change for other people. And I'm not talking just about the major organizations, the big famous ones that we've all heard of, but really ordinary folks, everyday citizens, as we like to call them, and they're there and they're trying to bring clean drinking water to villages, and they're trying to bring electricity to villages, and they're trying to help small farmers get insurance for their crops or get irrigation, and they're trying to help, clinics get into the rural areas so that mothers can have babies safely, and they're trying to bring meals to schools for children who can't eat at home, all of these kinds of things. They're teaching young people about their rights, about democracy, about why they need to stand up and vote. And there's so many people who are pouring their energy and their time and their knowledge and their lives actually into doing these things and to making that change. And I've always wanted to see them come together in this amazing network across the universe and across the globe. Not just the big famous saviors from the West, but Africans within Africa, from their own villages, their own towns, their own cities, and joining forces just with people around the world to learn from each other, to support each other, to help each other, to share ideas, to encourage, to open up opportunities for each other, to make that change bigger. To take it further, to be supporting each other, to make more change for more people, to make it positive. And so that's what has brought me here, to be in a position to learn and to contribute to let's create that social network for good that you've mentioned so many times, Jack. Let's bring people together in a place where action is what drives them, and tangible change and making that positive change. So that's why I'm here.
I'll sign up and support your application, Ermin. I think that's a cracker. Katie, thank you for jumping on the call and joining us. Tell us a little bit about your world and specifically the pointy tips. The question I'd love to hear from you and your thoughts on is, how do we unlock knowledge for everybody?
Well, just to give a little bit of background, I work at INSEAD. We're known as the Business School for the World. And right now we really have, what we try to do is transform students during their time with us so they can transform business. And in return, when they're transforming business, they can transform the world. And so the idea is that we're really thinking that using business as a vehicle for good. And we were founded 60 years ago in France with the idea of bringing peace and prosperity to war-torn Europe. So we're a very kind of mission-driven organization. And what has been great for me, I never thought in my 40s that my brain would be on fire and I would be learning so much. And I've been able to do that because we do attract a very diverse student population. And I think it's only by exposing ourselves to others and being aware of different cultures and backgrounds and kind of going back to that iceberg analogy, is what you see right now is not even a smidgen of who I am. And it's not until we engage with each other in a safe space that we can really see what's, you know, kind of underneath the surface. And that's when you really grow, and that's when you transform. And I think once you have that opportunity, that's when you can be a great force of change in the world.
And Dan, I'm not sure if you you would call your experience to date gaining a university degree, but I think you've been to the University of Life. You've probably scanned through a number of the texts that are taught at INSEAD in different ways and collected and borrowed. Tell us a little bit about your story as you've been on, you know, a couple of different paths with business, and now you're, you know, well and truly in the engine room with us working on Imagination University and a bunch of the work with AIM.
Yeah, I could definitely say I've been to the University of Life. Would have many, I don't even know if I've completed degrees, but I've attempted to complete many degrees. I left school, I had zero interest in university as a child. And I started a clothing label with my mates when I was 20, called Subi, and that ran for 13 years. And we got to make heaps of money and travel the world and do all kinds of fantastic artistic endeavors. And then I went from that to DJing and making wine and doing like random media stuff, that like just being around art and culture and things. And it was all fantastic, but it wasn't really serving much of a bigger purpose that other than like people involved in our world. And then had a little bit of an accident a few years ago, and it was a big wake up call for me. And then I realized that you can do all of these cool things, but you can do it to help the broader world, which is much, much, much bigger than the world that I was living in. So I now work with AIM alongside you, my friend, and the great team we've got, and love it. And yeah, I get to enroll for my first ever university, and actually I'm excited to go to university for once.
Yeah, it's cool.
20 years later.
I remember, you know, part of Imagination University, and we talk about building bridges, like, you know, I've had kids 2 hours outside of Kampala sort of talk about, you know, restrictions to university, worked with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander kids, Indigenous kids right across Australia who have never felt like university was a place for them. And then I remember we had a conversation once where you're like, yeah, university is for a certain sort of kid, but then there's like 65% of people who don't get to go there. And lots of people who, I don't think necessarily from a design perspective, this was the intent behind the founding of universities, but there are a lot of people that are outside the walls of universities feeling like they aren't smart, or they can't think deeply about ideas, or the intelligentsia are one group, and then there's a bunch of other people who are just your everyday citizens. And I think that's what we're really trying to help complement with the existing university models, is to help light up some of the energy inside of universities. Because I think about all of those business students, Katie, and I was lucky to go to university myself, and that's where AIM was founded. And we just had all these university students. So I thought, whoa, what a task force. You know, we had 40,000 university students at our campus. If you can get them active during the 4 years where they're effectively, you know, they're occupied, but also unoccupied before then going into employment, there's all of these incredible potential leaders that can go out. And if you can make service culture cool in the same way that Nike's made a pair of shoes cool, then we're a chance of mobilizing the necessary task force to turn around some of the educational inequity. And that's why I'm fascinated thinking about, yeah, the INSEADs of the world, or the other student bodies and universities that we've worked with already. There's so many people waiting, willing, who just don't quite know what the design step is for that first phase of experimentation. And I learned how to be a CEO at 22 by doing stuff, kind of a combination of Dan's world and then those pieces. Have you seen, my question, that's just a rant. My question for you, Katie, is as you've been through the journey and you get to unlock all of this knowledge working with these fascinating students, how hard is it to stay free in your mind to new possibilities? How hard is it to listen to a student when, you know, you're smart, you've done some stuff, you've got your skills set up, you've probably got a viewpoint on the world. How hard is it to have students sometimes come in and say something really new and that maybe challenges your very core? And how do you grapple with meeting them halfway to explore what that looks like?
Well, I think that's such an interesting question. I think, and what is really exciting is we just launched a new program. So we have our first Generation Z on campus. And this is such a group of communaholics. They're the most inclusive group we've seen thus far. They're very change oriented. And I think the idea is it's going in with an open mind and realizing that you need to learn from other people. But I think the idea also is, like you said, you learn by doing and becoming a CEO at age 22. You know, we have to make sure, and this is what I love about, you know, Imagination University, is that what we're doing is we're creating these places where people can do this. But what we also do is we make sure to create bottlenecks, or we try to create uncomfortable situations, or we try to kind of create those awkward silences. And so it actually puts people in the learning moment at that time and seeing how they respond and giving feedback. And I think it's only in creating those situations, and then being a lifelong learner yourself, is continually to put yourself in those kind of situations that either stress you or stretch you or expose you or allow you to take on feedback. And that's where you get the real growth and the learning, but that's the learning that also sticks.
I think we've got Ross who's joined us potentially here as well. Ross from Salesforce, have we got you?
You've got me. Excited
Ross,
to be here.
Thanks, man. I think it's good to have you here. I want to know about when your brain hurts and you're learning something. How do you get over the shame and the fear that is screaming at you to go, no, don't go into that. This hurts us. This hurts us. And it's sort of part of learning, I think. How have you trained your brain to work through pain, to work through insecurity, fear, to then go through learning moments and come out the other side?
It's a great question. And I think it speaks to today, the best skill anyone can have is a skill of resilience and adaptive advantage. And I think the ability to get that resilience and adaptive advantage, at least for me, is always thinking with a beginner's mind, and always knowing that the expert's mind knows nothing, but the beginner's mind can discover everything. And I think and what I love about Imagination University and why I want to enroll is that it promotes that sense of self-discovery continuously and over time. And I think it's so critical in today's world, because if you take a look at today's 18-year-old, they're likely to have 11 careers. So in the world where I went to university, you may have graduated with one certificate or one degree and carried that degree throughout your career. Today, I think there's an expectation that a graduate is going to be a computer programmer, and then an experienced designer, and then a CEO, and then, you know, start up a t-shirt company, and then
be a full-time parent for 5 years, perhaps, as part of it. Like, all different roles have been grouped together, haven't they? I love that idea of a beginner's mindset, and, you know, being able to, that's where I think imagination might be close to the first principle of human thought, that if we can flex it and train it as a muscle, we just get to see things clearly. My partner, who's about to jump on, laughed in a loving way, I think, last night after I was watching the budget speech from the Treasurer in Australia, who just delivered our budget last night, and then jumped from that to Aladdin. And I was like, okay, cool, let's watch some Aladdin now. So I think being able to try and train the muscular ability to see things anew is important. Hey, Ermin, can you tell us what's driving you internally to fight for a change in inequality, you know, to fight for the pointy tip of this work to try and be eradicating educational inequity and really build that fairer world? What is the fire that's inside that's pushing you?
This is my specialization, starting to talk when I'm on mute. I think it's part of my DNA, to be honest. I from as far back as I can remember, from the time I was a child, just the kind of it's not fair feeling has always been there, all the way down there. And I come from a very poor family. My dad is a very poor man, and all the way, he struggled really hard all the way through life, but he told all of us, all his 80 children, over and over and over again, get an education, get an education, get an education. That's the key to everything. That's the key to everything. And yeah, there are a lot of sides to that you know, we can unpack. But I think that there was always that drive that he always said to us, you need to go further than where you started. You've started here, you need to go further, number one. And secondly, it's really not just about us on the planet. If we all go together, if we all go forward together, we go forward. It just makes a lot more sense. So it's all of that. I don't know if that answers your question, but
yeah, it does. And I love adding to that the bridge of mentoring, which has been such a gift in my life to fall into this world that you, every step you take a step forward, you throw your hand back and bring someone with you. And if we have that as a design frame, you know, we sometimes, I think, forget that when we acquire all this knowledge, we're going to lose it when we die if we haven't written it down or shared it with people through story. And being able to take, you know, I'm lucky to be a part of a huge ancestry that goes back 60,000 plus years in Australia of Aboriginal people. And that's at its heart, taking knowledge, sharing it, and making sure that hopefully we've passed on that knowledge so we can make improvements. And that led to, you know, survivals and thriving through an ice age, through huge complexity, unbelievable architectural innovation, huge farming skill sets, like real genius, you know, 15, 10,000 years ago and before. And so thinking about, you know, and not being able to, not thinking about this cultural story of humanity in some past tense, that Aboriginal people are alive today, and there's lots of knowledge we can learn from all different cultures about just how we be a little less selfish with what we learn and that gift of knowledge. And I think we might have it sometimes a little bit trapped to the dollar of, oh, this is worth something for me to get a job. If we can kind of unlock a bit of that, I think we might be able to unlock some of this fairness that we're working towards. Hey, we are flying through today. So Katie, Ross, Dan, Erman, thanks so much for dropping in and just sharing a little bit about your thoughts. Really stoked to work with you all collectively to see what we can do with Imagination University, and we'll be open for the applications for the next 2.5 months. So lots of opportunities just to bring a really interesting collective of people together so we can start 2021 with a really imaginative bang. So thank you all for joining us today.
Thanks,
all right,
Jack.
we're gonna throw to a film that we made with a French filmmaker and with Tom Derry's company who was a part of founding and leading for such a significant amount of time, the M&C Saatchi family. We created a film called Cogs to help launch AIM globally 4 years ago now, and we're going to catch up on the other side of that with Yael Stone, who was part of that global launch with Watali and Siaka and a couple of friends to reflect on the global launch and where we've got to, and then where we're going to be going in the next little bit. So let's check out Cogs.
Ticking clock to cure pain. Every second means a mile. Every minute means a day. I hope you're walking in the sun. Hope you're going to be someone. Maybe today.
Hello, Yael. Good to have you on Imagination TV. How you going? Good. I think you might be on mute. I can hear you from upstairs around into the garage, but...
Oh no, I Zoom failed immediately. How embarrassing. I was just saying that I put on my tuxedo to sign up for university.
Awesome. Hey, can you take us back 4 years ago, give or take, when we walked onto that stage in New York, and yeah, what you felt energetically in that room in Chelsea Piers as you reached out to a bunch of different people that you work with in New York over an extended period of time, and we gathered together as two former Balmain primary school kids who have in that moment and since maybe we've fallen in love and then had a child together. But taking us back to that moment, sitting on a stage together, what was that like, and what were you feeling in the room as we got ready to go?
Well, the profound memory for me is actually watching you deliver a speech to that room, and feeling really overwhelmed by the power of your belief and your conviction. Also feeling overwhelmed by the reality of the challenge, and just how brave it was for an individual to stand up with this incredible organization, this incredible group of people, and face the challenge and say, I'm going to talk directly to the challenge and talk directly about solutions. And I was overwhelmed then by the bravery, just as I am overwhelmed and inspired now by the bravery and courage as the mission continues, the challenges continue, and you guys keep stepping up to the plate at every turn.
It was, I think part of it's totally scary talking about new worlds or saying like, I think we can change the world. Like, that's a bonkers statement to say out loud. But what gives me hope is that people respond when you put those dreams out there, and that the dreams they're never alive until you speak them. And then when you start speaking them, you have a chance of someone hearing it. And someone did hear it. A couple of people did hear it. Siaka, you got an email via a former AIM board director via your auntie, and we went to Stanford together. I went to Stanford with your auntie, and she passed on this opportunity, shared the COGS video, which is what Yael and I and a bunch of people helped launch in Chelsea Piers. Tell us what it was like to receive that, and if you can remember what our interview was like when I was sitting in Queens in our home, in our apartment in Queens, and we spoke about your vision to change Uganda and to mentor kids and to be our first hooded scholar. Can you reflect a little bit and take us back in time?
Oh yeah, thanks, Jack. I'd say it was crazy and funny, which I think crazy and funny. I like these two things, because this is the period when I was tired of like the frustration, and I was like, I have to do something. I had just gotten over an addiction, and I felt like I was ready to take a step and go back to my community, because I come from a very poor background. I come from one of the worst slums in Kampala. But this is the time when I was like, I have to do something about this. I just joined university, and I had chosen to do public health because I felt like the biggest problem in my community was people couldn't keep themselves healthy. So I wanted to be a health educator. And there was an opportunity. After I had heard about your story, about 3 years back, my auntie had told me about your story after meeting you in Stanford. And I was like, oh, if this guy is doing it in Australia, I can do it for my community. And 3 years later, I get an opportunity to bring what you're doing in Australia back home. And I felt like this was exciting. Sitting in that hotel room as I was talking to you, I remember the chat we had, and then I remember you telling me like, okay, if the university can't get the money, we can't run the program. And it's really in my mind, I'm like, we're trying to help or support helpless people. If we give up just because the university does not have the money, then these kids have no one left.
Which was part of the challenge for us scaling, which is why I'm so happy with Imagination University now that we're able to make it free. because the restriction is we grew in Australia in a place which is relatively privileged compared to a lot of countries around the world. And there was a financial supportive system for us working with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander kids here, which meant we actually could afford to employ people. And that was awesome over a period of time. But it also meant that suddenly we couldn't give the model in our brains to Uganda or South Africa or Nigeria or to remote communities. There was a limitation because we'd linked progress of the experience of mentoring kids to employment and to dollars. And what's really exciting now is we kind of go back to the future, which is saying to young people, if you're a university student, you want to lead change, here you go, set up a student chapter model and go and change the world, because we need to lift these kids out of inequity, because we know that all of these university students we're talking to have been these kids and they've had that opportunity. And so their responsibility is to go and bring people back with them. It's one of the things I'm most excited about after we've worked together for 3 to 4 years, that now Imagination University is free for schools, it's free for universities, it's free for teachers, it's free for executives, and we'll be able to provide the knowledge and the tools for people to go out and get to work. Vitali, we are rolling out the red carpet for you to enroll in Imagination University. That wasn't quite the case when you enrolled in the University of Pretoria. Tell us about the story of how you managed to get in the door to University of Pretoria to get yourself into university.
Thank you, Jack. I attended university first at the University of Venda, a rural university. That was from 2010 up until 2014. Then in 2016, I moved to Pretoria and I did my honors and I graduated for the second time. And during that time, I was trying to work with the community back at home, trying to afford them the opportunity that I had for going to the university. Because before I went to the university, I passed grade 12, but I did not know that I qualified to go to university, lack of information for that matter. So I judged myself and I told myself that, no, I don't qualify to go to university. And it just happened by chance that I was working as a delivery boy, and then I went into a university to deliver a package, and there was career guidance, and I was wearing, all the kids were wearing uniform, and I was wearing a work suit, and I kind of swallowed my pride and went forward and looked for the information and see. And then that's the day that I found out that I actually qualified for university. Then I thought, how many people in the community I'm coming from were like me, and they did not know that maybe they even qualify for anything. So when the email came through the University of Pretoria talking about AIM going global, what caught my eyes was the Cox video. Like it's a simple demonstration of a system that is not working properly and how it can be changed. And then after reading the book, I just knew that, no, man, we need this program in South Africa. And I was eager to get it here. So I did follow through with the application, and then I end up bringing AIM to South Africa. And it is exactly what I was hoping for, the kind of reaction and the output, the way the kids react to the program, the way the mentors behave and stuff like that. It's amazing. It's something that I'm really proud to be part of. And I think Imagination University also give an opportunity for anyone to can enroll in the university, because I know what it feels like to think that you can't do anything. Like when I was a delivery boy, I thought that was the end of it. Like I could be, I was just planning on becoming an assistant to becoming a driver. Maybe one day I will become a supervisor and stuff like that. So that's what I saw. And because when I grew up, university was considered like if you don't have university qualification, that's a limitation of what you can do. You can only work for those things. But when I'm working through AIM, I realize there's too many talent out of the university that need to be nurtured. I know a friend of mine who was a very good artist, but he didn't do anything about his art because they always said, if you don't have a qualification from the university, you can't do it. So he gave up his art. So the Imagination Universities will be there to make sure that people like the friend of mine can actually, realize his artistic dream without really worrying about how much percentage you need to get in grade 12 to enroll to the university.
Yeah. All of these sort of gates that we have to go through, which can then block, and then you just end up in that level and you have to stay at that level. Elle, can you tell us a little bit about the project you're thinking about working on as a citizen at Imagination University?
Yeah, I'd love to. So I have become more and more aware of this incredible separation between citizens in our silos. So we've all got our specific opinions about the world, and we're learning through social sciences that these differences in opinions are moving further and further apart. So we're losing this middle ground crossover. And that's really concerning, because as we move further and further into our silos, we lose those bridges between opinions. So I want to work on building bridges between different opinions. I want to work on being able to have conversations based on mutual respect between groups that think differently and act differently in the world, so that we can find some consensus, because I worry without any common ground, we lose the sanity of our system. So that's the project that I want to work on, and I've been actually working on it over a little while, kind of in my own little bubble, and I'm excited about being part of the university because I love sharing ideas. As you know, I really like being part of a team and bouncing ideas off other people, and I find that really motivating, being in a group. And because this project is based on different ideas coming together and having a conversation based around good quality listening, it makes sense to me that I would develop it in the context of lots of different kinds of people, potentially from all over the world.
Yeah, brilliant. Really looking forward to seeing what comes to life with that project. And we talk often about, how do you protect that grey space for complexity, for misunderstanding, for then through misunderstanding, hopefully understanding. And Vitaly Siaka, we're talking about the hopeful, positive opportunities that lay ahead. I've got a friend called Professor Hope who's going to be a key part of the university, and they were saying to me the other night that they haven't been able to stay hopeful without a struggle. Like, it's come at a cost, and they've had to get up and they've had to choose to fight for that. They've had tough times behind them, and really simply, hope doesn't come easy. How do we build that muscle of hope if we want to see that progress? A couple of thoughts from both of you, and then we'll finish up with our last little panel of people for today's show.
I think from personal opinion or personal perspective, I feel like the more, because most of the times all of us are looking at what can I do to help who is next to me? What can I do to inspire hope in the people around me and the community? But especially the 3 years I've been at AIM, I've come to learn that if I'm not focusing on myself enough, if I'm losing hope in what I can do as a person or how better I can get as a person, then there's not so much hope I can pass on to the people around me or the community. So I feel like the way to hang on to this hope the most is igniting that imagination in us that things are going to get better, or I can make myself better, or I can improve myself every single moment or every single minute.
Yes, for me, you know, it's I look at the small positive things going on around me. It could be friends, it could be family. Even when things are tough in my life, I look and I appreciate the positives in other people's lives, and I know my time will come. So that's where my hope is. I know that if I put some work on it, it will happen. You know, so that's how I keep hope alive. Like I look at the positive things happening all around me during the COVID-19, during the time when things were really tough. Some small positives were still happening. So I know the positive things are still exist. So that's how I keep hope alive.
Well, Vitali, Siaka, and Yael, thank you all for being an inspiration to me in many ways over the last 4 years in particular, and the work that we've all done as a little group together, plus a group of friends to share this idea around the world and give the foundation for Imagination University to launch today. I just wanted to thank you all individually, and thank you for enrolling in Imagination University and being a part of the experience.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you, Jack.
Okay, we're now coming to the end of what feels like an epic. I've stand up for an hour and 40 minutes. I feel like I'm on a cricket field, just standing in the outfield doing something more engaging than playing cricket. Michael Trail, stoked to be able to have you jump on and join us and explore connecting with Imagination University. We met, oh gosh, maybe 12 years ago now, when I bumbled into Social Ventures Australia with the kernel of an idea to try and see if AIM could create change domestically. And then the last 4 or 5 years, we've taken the model around the world. What interests you in Imagination University, and can you build a bridge back to that first meeting point on what you saw in some of the DNA on what we had and what you've observed since then?
No, well, great to connect on this, and that's a meeting that I will never forget. The youthful, exuberant, ambitious, aspirational energy of JMB, aged circa 22, with a plan to change the country, which it did through the remarkable work of AIM, and what a privilege it was to connect to that work when I was then at Social Ventures Australia. And I think the spirit of what you're doing around this is fantastic. So as a relative geriatric, I had my 60th birthday this year, which prompts a second midlife, is really inspiring. So the thing that really motivates me, post my life at SVA, I've been pretty heavily involved in looking at the finance system. One of the hats that I wear, I'm on the board and chair the investment committee of Sun Super, which is a large Australian superannuation fund that manages a pool of $70 billion. And that's been a really interesting, insightful journey. Jackie, you know me well enough. I'm not naturally the sort of person who feels instinctively comfortable on the boards of bigger companies. I like hanging around with entrepreneurs. But that learning journey has taught me a lot about the $3 trillion superannuation industry in Australia. It's a powerful pivot point. It mobilises capital. And so the idea and the opportunity that if you could liberate some pools of that funding for impact investing, which is that frontier of large scale investment, where you can generate both reasonable, ethical, long dated financial returns and drive measurable social impact, is something that I find a remarkable and actually really practical opportunity. At the front end of that journey, one of the things, as you know, I was involved closely in was the formation of a unique social enterprise called Good Start Early Learning, which is the largest provider of early learning and care in the country. And in a sense, Good Start, where we raised $165 million in capital to run it as a social enterprise. But, the interesting side note to that is that the original investors who shared that vision got a 12% return over an 8-year period. So if I switch hats back to my role at Sun Super, you'd say yes every time to a 8 to 10 to 15 year investment where you could generate those sort of returns. And how much cooler is it if you can drive visible social impact in a space where you're improving the quality of educational opportunity for young people? So that's the thing that I'm really excited about.
Is really fascinating for me as we look at, we've got one of the topic disciplines we're teaching is hoodie economics, where we're exploring this idea of what does different economic modeling look like? Now there's some established modalities of thinking, which we've kind of, ended in a goop of combinations around, whether it's Keynesian work of spending, getting everyone moving, whether we're looking at, we're maybe near a universal basic income with JobKeeper or something like that, modern monetary theory, and then going back in time to other economic models. And as we think about our capital moves, what I'm fascinated about is how do you link kindness, time, service, knowledge, wisdom into an exchange ratio that connects people together, and how do we value that? And some of the work that you've done, I think, is really practical and pragmatic. We're just kind of going, well, what if we move the investment to the front of the queue and we look at some of these things that also create social change? Kalani, you're about to finish year 12, pretty big year to finish year 12. What's piqued your interest about potentially having the chance to lead a student chapter at university next year if you were to become an Imagination president?
Look, it's something that I'm very heavily invested in, is leadership. And, I'm school captain here, first Indigenous school captain at my school, go me. And I also, it's been something that, I think everybody's a leader. They just need to have that little push. And I had that push from my Indigenous coordinator here and from AIM. And I think if I was given the opportunity, and hopefully I am, is I really want to create more of or at least at the places that I'd be doing is I'd want to create more of a holistic approach where it's not Indigenous, it's not non-Indigenous, it's not white fellas, black fellas, we're a community, and we acknowledge each other that we're different. And that's something that, at least at my school here, we've tried to really push is inclusion, because there's not much of it. And it's something that we're really trying to work on here.
Yeah, fascinating. I think we've got Kiri there with us. Kiri, are you there?
Hey.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
Hey, thanks for joining us and being a part of this experience. We're fascinated with your journey with education so far, and I'd love to hear what sort of drew you into this world of imagination that we're looking to explore with Imagination University.
Yeah, so my role currently is principal at a small democratic primary school in North Queensland in Townsville. I guess I came to this journey going through the schooling system and succeeding to a point, but reaching the end of it and realizing that I didn't have a voice. I didn't know how to use my voice. I didn't know what my passions were. And I hadn't developed any sense of that creativity. I ticked some boxes along the way. And coming into teaching, I very soon realised that the core features of our education system haven't changed since the 19th century. We're still working on a very industrialised model of education, and it just doesn't fit with what the world that these kids are in today. I quickly realised there needs to be major systemic change in what education looks like. So like Ross was saying earlier, that skills have changed. We don't necessarily know what the jobs are for these kids. And, content is at the touch of a button for these kids. It's the skills behind that they need to learn to, approach these potential 11 jobs that they're going to be faced with in their lifetime. So moved into working at a small democratic school, which is aiming to change what education looks like. So giving it back to the kids and recognising that they are immensely capable of taking control of their learning. They have amazing voices. They want to learn. And when we give them that choice, when we let them be in charge of their own learning, that they're so much more engaged. We've sort of watched in education this huge impact seeing kids and their mental health deteriorate. And we've never stopped and looked at, is the education system contributing to that? Does there need to be change?
I think there's so many pressure points that you're pushing in on, which are where the insight is something similar to I've seen around education structures, both nationally and globally. And Michael and I have spoken about this and been in a number of different rooms over the years. And one of the challenges which I always struggled with, I'd kind of like sit in the education conference and get smaller and smaller down into my chair when someone would say, well, we just need to change the whole system, because I could never understand what the next step would be into that. Like, I don't think we're ever going to lose the buildings that we've got. I don't think we're going to lose the buildings that we've got with universities, at least not, you know, immediately. That would be something quite significant if all those buildings suddenly came down. What Einstein speaks about design and invention, and says that sometimes it's the smallest little tweak that can create the biggest change. And I think if we can find what we're hoping to do with Imagination University is just colour those corridors a little bit more, and just open up a little bit of a framework with teachers where you don't have to lose some of the pedagogy and structures, which are helpful. Like, it's good, it is helpful to learn mathematics, it's helpful to learn some scientific skills. There are some things which are really valuable. And there are some teachers and schools within that system that have done their best to try and adjust and stay up, and teachers that are trying to understand how to stay relevant. We're just in this like gnarly period where lots and lots of changes happen in the last 10 to 15 years, and it's accelerated. And so I think hopefully we can provide a complementary safe space for teachers and for students to come together and do that designing. And I think it's perhaps somewhere in between the push and the pull of, here's some structured learning, here's some democratic learning, and that's the science and the art meeting each other. Brendan, you spent a few years out in the ocean, and now you're heading to Imagination University, perhaps your second university you're going to. What is it that you're seeing from your time in the ocean to everything in between to wanting to then enroll in Imagination University?
Yeah, my time in the ocean was mostly driven by how busy my mind was. So I'd put myself there, particularly in big swells, because my mind would become still there, especially when the big waves would, sort of almost be life-threatening at times. So then I tried to marry that up with a very structured setting where I did 4 years of education and a bit of med science, and jumped into a role with you guys at AIM. And they're two really different worlds, one with a lot of structure and one with a lot of flow. And I've been battling to try to bring those two things together. And what I think Imagination sort of paints a picture of is more of that ocean setting where there are a lot of unknowns, but there's also a lot of freedom and you can find your zone. I think education may have sort of lost that a little bit, and I'm excited to try to be a part of the group that explore bringing that back. And the ocean for me is a really good metaphor for how we can find flow. Every wave rider has their own individual way of doing that, which I suppose is not unlike a student at a school or Imagination University.
Christy, what's exciting you about Imagination University, and what's at the core of you wanting to see the change that we're all trying to create here around lifting kids out of inequality, freeing their minds to have that flow that Brendan's talking about, and really try and build a fairer world? What's sort of burning inside of you as you line up to be one of the students and be a part of this experience?
Thanks, Jack. Well, there's a lot burning up inside of me of excitement for the university. I'm mainly super pumped to enroll because from being a mum and an auntie, I'm motivated to help end inequality, to have a fairer world for them to grow into, so they have more opportunities that I may not have had when I was growing up, and to light up people's minds with imagination. I've been thinking about what is going to be my project, and watching the COGS video and thinking about imagination and that. And I like to laugh. Humor gives me strength, in facing hard times. And when you ask the question, what gives you hope? And I guess humor gives me hope because it turns a light on in the dark, really, for me. And so I guess I would like to, my project, I haven't put any structure around it or anything, or nutted out the full nuts and bolts, but I'd like to bring happiness a bit more to the world. And, that will free the mind and hopefully get that imagination running as well with it.
Thanks, Christy. As we whip around to wrap up today's show, 6 words or less. Michael, what's giving you hope at the moment?
Young people, aspirational imagination.
The future of our young black fellas. That's 7, but
I think we can say black fellas is one word. We got that one.
But we combined it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I think it's seeing the future, seeing who is heading into our future and their enthusiasm and their passion.
Brendo?
Because I like to break rules.
You're not alone. Christy?
Seeing a safe, happy, colourful world.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for being a part of this experience. And as Siaka and Vitali were alluding to, hope doesn't come without work and without effort. And there'll be a fair bit of work for us as we try and bring these projects to life next year. And really excited to have you all gather with us and everyone that's gathered with us today to put your applications in for Imagination University. Jump onto aimmentoring.com and we'll get it rolling. And then we're going to be doing these specials over the next 7 to 8 days. And then we'll be dropping back in over the next 2.5 months with lots of different people from around the world. We have a group that we're talking to, about 1,000 young people enrolling in Imagination University next week, which is really exciting. A couple of key leaders in India that are looking to see what we might be able to do over there as well. A couple of really key organisations who work with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander young people to look at university student chapter leaders. Lots coming in the next sort of couple of months as we try and bring as many of the world together to get together, imagine what's possible, look at mentoring, and then get out there and organise a change we want to see next year. So thanks everybody for being a part of today's show. And we're going to finish with the university launch film that we played at the top, just to reflect and zoom out on what we're trying to do together. We'll see you all tomorrow at 12 noon Australian Eastern Daylight Time with another crew of people that are lining up to want to change the world.
We know what happened in 2020. But let's imagine 2021.
Let's imagine what a free and just world looks like.
Let's imagine a university free for all, with no paywalls to higher order thinking for anyone, anywhere. Let's imagine a social network for good. A bridge for us to come together and redesign the way the world works. Let's imagine what happens when we tell the kids at the back of the class that we see you.
There is a generation of kids just like you.
Let's imagine school students, university students, teachers, executives, citizens coming together to learn. Curriculum designed for the future we hope to build. Now imagine. It's happening right here. And you're invited. Welcome to Imagination University, brought to you by AIM, the Imagination Factory. Applications are open now.